Hi everyone, I'm Vivian Hermiz and welcome to the Wellness Toolkit, what used to be called the Resilience Toolkit, which we used to also call Mindfulness classes. What are all the different names we had for it, Frank? I'm here with Frank Baird
Hi. I don't remember all the names, but we keep thinking maybe we'll get the right name.
to get our audience back or something.
Right. So that people will go, that, I need
That I remember
that.
that class. So, yes, welcome everyone. We're happy that you're here and Happy New Year. Hope you had a safe and pleasant celebration. And to start off with, we're just going to take care of a little bit of the logistics of our sessions. First of all, this is a drop-in class and it's suitable for everyone at whatever knowledge or experience and practices that you may have. We don't assume that you know anything about the practices or the topics that we touch upon. And we actually pull from a lot of different modalities to bring you the best of the best to build your wellness toolkit. And the way we formatted these classes is that we start with an introduction of the overall toolkit, and then we move into a period of practice that Frank is going to speak or lead us in, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion about the practice tonight, and looking forward to your participation. Before we jump in, we do have a question, an engagement question for you, and we invite you to respond to it in the chat box. And, did you use any particular practice this past week? And if you did you notice any benefits from the practice this past week? And do you have any personal insights from the practice that you used this week? We actually got a comment at the start of the class that someone found the Just Like Me practice from last week very beneficial in navigating their relationships during the holidays. So yeah, that was one that we received. Frank, do you see anything coming up? It might be too
Not
quick to ask,
nothing
too
yet,
soon to
and
ask.
we ended up asking a lot of questions because we went from zero questions to a lot of questions now. Um, but the idea is briefly in the attendee chat, if you would, just a few words about any benefits from any of these practices in the last week. So if you're new here, you may not have anything to comment on. Or you may be new here but familiar with some of these practices.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hoping to get a glimpse of what you're doing and how it's going. And this is one way we might do it, by having you drop something in the attendee chat.
So the skills in this toolkit, we've again refined the presentation a little more to kind of show that they fall into four major buckets, and we'll go through each one. The first one is mindfulness, the second one is insight, the third one is resilience, and the fourth one is stress management. So mindfulness is directing your attention on purpose by maintaining a moment by moment, that's I think aspirational, moment by moment awareness of your thoughts, your feelings, your physical body sensations, and whatever is happening externally in your environment. And it's also a piece to it involves cultivating a gentle and nurturing attitude around whatever is arising as you're experiencing it. Obviously, a lot of judgments, thoughts, biases come up, even if just you're weighing whatever is coming up as you're taking things in through your different senses, but in the hopes that when you come to it in a mindful way, you can also bring in that awareness a gentle and nurturing attitude towards it.
So one of the things that will come in this toolkit from these practices that we're doing is you'll also get insight. And insight is a deep understanding of your relationship with yourself. Insight really is like, I start to know things, right? Insight's the fancy word for I just know stuff. But you'll know stuff about you. You'll know more stuff about your conditioning. And then the really nice part about all of these practices together is you'll start to have choices about how you live your life. Because if you know what's going on and you know whether it's different from what you want or need, now you have the opportunity, the awareness of choice points, and you'll also have some of the skills that you'll need to be able to shift your life more in a preferred direction.
Resilience is the capacity, the flexibility, and the strength with which we meet life circumstances. It's our ability to resist collapse and hopefully bounce back from whatever adversity or challenge we experience.
And then stress management, because everybody's going to have stress in their life. Stress is inevitable. And one of the things about stress management is knowing when it's safe to rest, because often when we're stressed, we're not resting or we feel like we can't rest. But nothing is forever. So part of the skills that we help you with here is being able to start to identify when is it safe enough to rest, and then resting effectively. And then one of the things we found is really helpful with stress management is changing the focus away from the stressor exclusively, because most of us are like, oh, I need that thing to stop, or I need that thing to change or ease up. And it's like an exclusive focus, like it's the bad guy and I'm being crushed. One of the things we found is really helpful is shifting the focus from exclusively being on the stressor to how we're meeting it or responding to it. Because we have a lot more say in that. Sometimes we don't know how much say we have in that, but we have a lot of say. And with these skills that we're helping you develop, put together, access, you'll be able to do that with either less difficulty or greater ease. And so one of the things about stress management is practicing when it's safe enough to practice. So this class is a place where you can practice. And our invitation is to practice often, because the more you practice, the less difficult or easier it becomes. And the more you practice, it becomes like a new beneficial habit. They talk these days a lot about like rewiring your brain. So you're not just acting out your conditioning or your habit, but now you're cultivating these new, more beneficial ways of being.
And just to before we jump into this month's theme, I want to bridge the link of what you just said, Frank, and why the just like me, because another person commented, I believe, in the chat.
It was the same
Oh,
person.
sorry.
They popped. Yeah.
And I thought that was
But it can be more.
okay. People are saying they found it hard to find us, and that's I thank you for persevering to find it, because we changed the name and everything, and we sense that there might be some challenges with that. But just to bridge the link, that if you were using this technique, and in that stressful situation, you were doing exactly that. You weren't getting, what do you call it, mired in the stressor, that whatever that person was, but really you were touching into the qualities in them that mirror qualities in you, and that you were kind of removing the stressful factor out of it and just taking it on a very basic level. So that is just one way it connects. So the theme for this month. Wow, Frank. All you have to do is change a couple of slides and all of a sudden our whole rhythm is like... But the sound is still there.
Right.
So we decided that the theme for the month was going to be the stories of our lives, how we create the narrative and make sense of the things we experience. And I'll give it to you, Frank, to share about today.
And it really is, this month is focused on how we make meaning. And we'll have opportunities to consider how we make meaning, how we can change meaning, Because most of us are here because we want something to be different. The different might be a similar thing but better, or a lot of times it's like I need and want something to be really, really different. And meaning, the meaning that we make is often a thing that can motivate us or thwart us. So we thought we'd explore that this month. To start with, though, what we'd like to do is start with a practice. We find that starting with a practice often helps people settle, be more present. Sometimes it can help people be more open to the practice and what we end up talking about later. And also, one of the things we wanted to do was let you have the experience of the practice, and then what we say about it can be secondary, right? It doesn't mean it's not valuable or important, but one of the things we'll be talking about today is the difference between the meaning or the story about an experience and the direct experience. So it's if you've done this practice with us before, you know the instructions. If you're new here, really all you have to do is get comfortable. Find a comfortable posture to be in. Your eyes can be open or closed. Listen to my voice. I'm going to be providing some instructions. And as best you can, emphasis on as best you can, right? So it's going to be relative. It's not going to be perfection. But as best you can, cultivate and have a gentle, friendly attitude and make a gentle, friendly effort to be with whatever's happening right now. And then I always say, because it's happening, so why not? And then often why not is because I don't like it, because it's unpleasant, because I prefer this or that, right? And that's part of the practice. So the idea here is as best you can, try to have a gentle, friendly attitude and make a gentle, friendly effort, and stop if you need to, and stop even if you just want to. Right? Remember that this practice is for you, and you are the best judge of, is this the right time for me to do this? Sometimes I'll sit down to practice and I go, I'm just not in the mood. Now that's a good time sometimes to go ahead and practice, and sometimes it's not. So use your judgment about whether or not right now is a good time to practice. And if it is, then let's begin. So I sometimes find it helpful to start a practice by stating my intention. So I'll say either in the privacy of my own head or I'll say it out loud, I'm going to start now. I'm going to practice now. And sometimes I'll do that with a deep inhalation and a long, full exhalation. So in my mind, I've announced to myself I'm going to practice. And then sometimes breathing this way is a way of adjusting my body to the practice. So if you'd like to try that now, you might take a slow, deep, full inhalation, and then a slow, long, full exhalation. And it helps at the start of a practice to notice the state you're in. Sometimes the state is I'm energetic and I need to be calmer to really benefit from practice. And sometimes the state you're in is I'm really sleepy, tired, bored, and I really need like some energy to help me engage in the practice. So you might start by checking in with yourself and consider which adjustment would benefit me right now. Energizing my body a little bit or calming my body a little bit. If you need to energize it, you might stand up. Or you might, if you're sitting, you might sit up straighter, taller. If you're wanting to energize your body, you might take some deep breaths and really oxygenate the body more. And if you're wanting calming energy, you can also take some deep breaths. It works both ways. And then what you might do is notice any places in your body that feel tense or tight, and see how much of that tension or tightness you can let go of. So starting the practice by noticing where you are and considering and adjusting so that you can be in a way to practice more the way you want, to be present enough to practice. And whether your effort or adjustment is to energize the body or calm the body, when you feel settled enough, you might bring attention to breathing. You might notice how the body breathes on its own. For this practice, you don't have to breathe in any particular way. In fact, part of this practice is letting it happen just the way it's happening and letting your attention rest with the breathing that's happening. Letting the breathing that's happening be the focus of attention. And the breathing that's happening right now, you can use it as a attention anchor or a meditation anchor. So you focus attention on the felt sensations of breathing. And whenever attention inevitably wanders off or gets pulled away to anything else, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it's drawn to. When you notice, you might gently bring it back to breathing. So just like breathing in and breathing out, you focus attention, it goes somewhere else. You bring it back. Breathing in and breathing out. And you might notice thinking happening. You might notice emotions happening. You might be aware of other sensations happening in the body, or something happening in your immediate environment. You don't have to stop those things to practice. The friendly, gentle effort you make is you notice them, acknowledge, and gently bring attention back to breathing. Just breathing. And remembering to pay attention, to notice where attention is. And wherever it is right now is okay. In terms of practice, it's okay. Notice, acknowledge, and gently bring attention back to breathing. Noticing where attention is now. Helping the body settle in this way helps the mind settle, helps our emotions settle. Sometimes they don't settle as much as we hoped for. Sometimes we want to be more focused or more relaxed than we actually are in this moment. And the invitation is be aware of that longing or that demand. Acknowledge it. And then as best you can, let go of it and bring attention back to breathing. Just feeling, breathing, happening. So for tonight's practice, I invite you to consider this. You can continue to practice just the way you are right now, if you'd like. Or you might consider this invitation. This invitation is to pick one of your 5 senses to use for the purposes of this practice. You can continue using breathing if you'd like, or you can shift attention to sight or to hearing, to smell or taste or touch. And it sort of doesn't matter what sense you pick for this practice, because you'll have lots of time to practice with anything else you want to. So pick one. And then what you're going to do is use this as your attention anchor. So identify something that you sense. So if your eyes are open, pick one thing that you can see. Or if you're using hearing for this exercise, pick the thing that you can hear that you'll focus on. If it's touch, you might decide what it is you're touching or where. So for example, it could be your fingertips, the palms of your hands. It could be your back making contact with a chair, or your feet making contact with the floor. So pick one sense and then can you identify one quality available to that sense? So for example, if you're looking at something, you might identify the shape or the color. You might name the object. If you're focusing on taste, it might be obvious taste or subtle taste. It might be spicy or sweet. So picking a sense and then identifying one quality about that sense. And let your attention linger there. The thing you're seeing or the thing you're hearing or touching or smelling or tasting. And now can you identify a second quality in the thing that you're sensing? So not shifting to another thing, not shifting to another sense, but that same sense, the same focus. Can you identify another quality of the experience? If I was seeing something and I noticed its shape, can I now identify its color? And now can you identify one more quality one more quality about the thing that your sense is focused on. And now you might notice this thing that your sense is focused on. Is your overall experience of it pleasant or unpleasant or neutral? This is often called the feeling tone, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And you might think of your relationship to pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral in this way. I like it. I don't like it. I don't care. And if you were completing this sentence in your mind, I like it, I don't like it, I don't care because. What's the because? Why do you like it? Or why do you not like it? Or why don't you care? And you don't have to justify this to anyone. This is just noticing when I bring my attention to this, I experience it like this. And I like it, don't like it, or don't care because. So you may have noticed I just invited you to think and feel a little bit about whatever it is, whatever sense your attention is focused on. And so just spending a moment considering, why do I like it or not like it, or why don't I care about this? Just a moment. You notice it. Notice if that's a thought about the thing or if it's a feeling about the thing. And then let go of that thought or that feeling. Let go of this inquiry and bring attention back to breathing. Just feel breathing happening. The rhythm of breathing. The sensations of breathing. And to conclude our practice for tonight, you might take a couple of deep, long, full inhalations and some long, slow exhalations at your own pace. And let these deliberate and deep inhalations and exhalations be your way of announcing to yourself, I am concluding my practice now. With these breaths, this practice comes to an end. And when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, you might open them. You might move your eyes around in their sockets. You might move your head around on your neck. You might shrug your shoulders, stretch, maybe wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. You might yawn if you like. And this will conclude our practice for tonight. One of the things you might do is notice and acknowledge your current mood or state. Is it similar to when you started the practice? Is it different? Do you feel more settled, more grounded, more centered, or less? And if you can, just for now, not judging it, just noticing. I say just is always supposed to say, that's so easy. Noticing. If I can, let go of judging and just noticing. So thank you for your practice. So now we have some time for questions, comments, answers, explorations. I'm going to talk a little bit about more meaning making and storying, and you can pop questions into the either attendee chat or the Q&A if you just want your comment or question to go directly to Vivian or me. And while you are considering that, and sometimes people just want to be quiet. At the end of the practice, it's just like, I just want to stay like this. So shut up and don't bother me. So you can do, I won't shut up, but you could turn off your sound. But anyway, for tonight's topic, I want to tell you a story about stories. So I say this because it's a story I have. Sometimes people are interested in the truth. And my relationship to the truth is, I don't know. I think of the truth as truth claims. People claim to know the truth, to have the truth. And I don't know. So this is a story I have about stories and the way we make meaning. And it's one of many. So my invitation to you is consider this, and if it's useful or meaningful, great. And if it's not, great, right? It's I think of the truth like this. A story like this, it doesn't have to be true to be either inspiring or motivating or irritating. Right? That's the opposite end of the spectrum around stories. So here's the story that I think of. So we experience phenomena, and phenomena, for me and for the purpose of this story, the character of phenomena is played by stimuli, things out in the world, we encounter. We encounter them through one of our five senses, or some people will say six, because it includes our mind, right? We can experience things in our mind that are maybe not necessarily quote unquote true or in the external world, but the mind is a sense as well. So we experience phenomena, and the phenomena we experience has a feeling tone, and it's always pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And the way we relate to that is, I like it, I don't like it, and I don't care. So these are I think of this as the phenomena is our direct experience moment by moment. And one of the qualities of mindfulness is it helps me be more aware of the direct experience I'm having, or in some ways, am I having a direct experience to the phenomena, or is it mediated through the story I have about it? So here's what I think of language and story. So phenomena occurs briefly. So let's say I'm standing, this is one of my favorite memories. I'm in Northern California, standing in the redwood forest, and it's raining, and it's really quiet, and I have a really nice coat on, so I'm warm. Key part of this story. And it's beautiful, right? So trees, falling rain, sound of water, the sound that's available in a forest, like that kind of sound, absence of like people sounds. The scent of the air is really beautiful and rich. And the phenomena of that lasted for a while, right? So a while is always like, it could be a moment. And how long is a moment? But it lasts and then it goes, right? Even while I'm standing there, it's shifting. Like sometimes I'm noticing the scent of the air more than other times. Sometimes I'm noticing the sound of the falling rain more than other times, right? So not only is the phenomena shifting, but my attention is shifting, which my attention is really my experience of the phenomena. So then one of the things we do is with language, we can hold on to the approximation of the phenomena for a longer time, right? We're able to put that in our head. I'm able to share that with you now. The language that describes what happened, but what happened isn't happening anymore. What's happening now is an approximation that's available through language. And then language is a bunch of, I'm going to say words. There are lots of different ways to have language. It can be symbols, it can be movements, but for now I'll just use words. But then we put those words together in a story and it expands the experience of the phenomena, right? We appear to expand their duration for an even longer period of time. Like the scene I described to you, that was probably 20 years ago. But when I tell the story to myself in memory, or I'm telling it to you here now, like I can take myself there, but I don't know what there you're experiencing because you're probably going, oh yeah, I remember being in the rain and it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Or maybe I've been to the redwoods, maybe I haven't, right? So there's this approximation going on. It's not the phenomena. Now this can sound like Frank, please don't go on about all of this philosophy. Like I'm here because I'm feeling depressed or anxious or tense. But here's why I think this is important. Stories can be inspiring and they can also be limiting. And one of the things we're practicing with mindfulness is being able to discern the difference between, is this my direct experience of this phenomena, or am I relating to it based on my story about the phenomena? So the question is, can we tell the difference between the meaning or the stories we have that were given to us? Because we're born into a world where there's lots of meaning in circulation. And then can we tell the difference between the meaning and the stories of our direct experience in phenomena? And do we have a choice? Because here's one of the things I think where this becomes really helpful to know. I can experience, so maybe this is a pretty culturally common kind of story, right? You're sick, you need to take your medication, and medication always tastes awful, right? I like listening to comedians talk about, what is it they talked about? Oh, always using Vicks Vapor Rub or castor oil, or, it's like for some reason it's always constructed as this is going to be miserable. Like your medicine can't be pleasant because then we don't call it medicine, we call it dessert. But right, there's this notion that it's awful and it's good for you. And there's a difference between when somebody tells me that and when I experience it directly. Because sometimes when people tell me something like that, they're not being honest. They're trying to sell me something, right? They're trying to convince me of something that disconnects me with my lived experience. And then sometimes, like our parents, they were right. And so it's really, really helpful, I think, to be able to look at my own experience, make that distinction. This is I'm going to use the phrase raw phenomena. And this is the story that I have about it. And to the extent I can tell the difference, one of the things that's possible is I have a more accurate reading of reality, and I also have more choices about how I'm going to relate to what's happening. Because if, for example, I've had the experience of, let's say, super critical parents, maybe some of you have had this experience, a super critical parent or teacher or someone, often an adult, when we were growing up. And so our habit and our conditioning is we either believed their version of us, or we were just constantly crushed, or maybe not constantly, but too frequently crushed by their story about us. And so then what happens is we find ourselves relating to people in our adult lives like they were them. I think of this like how many people think of their employer as a good or bad parent. And here's the most common and most unfortunate. We think of our partners as either the good or bad parent, right? So like we're not even relating to them, we're relating to the story we have about either them or who they're like, or that the things they're doing are like this. And so we may be right. This is not to say that we don't have stories that aren't true or aren't accurate. The key thing here, though, is if we can deconstruct that in our practice and with mindfulness and insight, we start to have a choice about how we're going to relate to that. And one of the benefits of that choice is I'm not run, or my well-being isn't dictated by a story I developed about something like when I was 5. For a long time, I go like, wow, I'm walking around afraid that people are going to treat me like, not even like I was actually treated in 8th grade, but like I was afraid somebody was going to treat me in 8th grade. Right. And I go like, it's been a long time since I've been in 8th grade. Maybe it would be nice if I just sort of, and it wasn't even an accurate 8th grade depiction, right? So it's like, maybe I can stop carrying that story with me or being under the influence of that story and can have more choice about how I'm going to live my life now, unburdened by that. And sometimes I'm sort of describing it like you just set it aside. Sometimes it takes a lot of work to set it aside. And especially things like trauma takes a lot more work to set aside. And often we can't set it aside, but we negotiate a new relationship with it. So the invitation with these practices and with mindfulness is to notice what's the difference between the raw stimuli, the raw phenomena, and my story about it. And just moment by moment, can I notice it? The best way to start to tell the difference between the raw phenomena and the story is noticing what we do in our relation to the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Because that's where the story really, really starts to emerge. So I'm curious, Vivian, do you have any additional thoughts in relation to any of this? Or if it's felt like way too philosophic, stop, Frank, bring it down.
I don't think so.
Do you have any of that?
I don't think so at all. I think you brought it with the examples that you gave. Like at the start of it, you were talking about being in the redwoods in Northern California. I grew up in San Francisco, and my first thought was, you're enjoying standing in the, because I had been caught many a times in rain as a kid, and then the story shifted as soon as you said, and I had a very warm coat. So do you see that? It like,
yeah,
I was like, okay, and now I'm writing with you. At that point, I was like, I got it. But there was a moment there where you were steering. You thought you were steering it, and building an image in my mind based on my own actual experience growing up there. I was pulling that memory or something I thought was identical, but it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're both, right? Even when we're experiencing the phenomena, we're experiencing it differently. Mm-hmm. But then it's mediated by words and by stories, right? And then the expectation about where this is going to go. Because if the expectation is, I don't have a warm coat because too many times I didn't, it's going to be a different story.
Yeah.
I'm curious if people have thoughts or questions. They can pop them in the chat or the Q&A box.
So far, it's quiet on the chat front.
All quiet. Because nobody wants to use words or stories or be influenced by them. So maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But another thing we want to invite you to do. So part of the practice that we did today is called a 5 senses practice. And we kind of did a setup, right, where it's like you settle down into an extended period of practice. The idea behind settling down is that you're potentially less reactive, right? You don't just have the momentum of the day. You are able to sort of get yourself in a place where maybe you can be more observational instead of storing or judging. Or at least I should say this more accurately, catch yourself when you're judging or storing. So what you might do is practice this. So between now and if you come back next week, do this. Do it for 1 minute, 3 times a day. I'm making all these numbers up so you can add to it or you can make it shorter. I use a phone reminder because I have no memory anymore. Or I should say more accurately, I store it externally in my phone. And then pick all your senses or pick one. And then identify one thing you sense. And then I like this, identify 5 aspects or qualities of that one sense. And then try to notice the difference between this is an observation and this is a story I have about it. So it'd be sort of like I'm noticing a glass bottle is different than, oh, that's a beer bottle and my dad was an alcoholic and that was right. It's like that story happens really, really quickly. And it's not about whether you can do it or not. It's play around with it and try it.
And can I?
And
yeah,
Vivian,
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
So when we say identify one thing you sense, and then identify 5 aspects or qualities of that sense, what would that be? So if I'm observing something.
So if I'm observing, say, a bottle.
Yes.
Right. It's a long, thin bottle. It's glass. Okay. It's amber in color. It's empty, okay. Or it's full. It has a cap on it.
Okay.
Right. And then a judgment or a story would be, it's a Coke bottle. I love Coke. I hate Diet Coke. I shouldn't drink Coke at all. Right. Or like the example of it's a beer bottle. Yeah. And I immediately get triggered whenever I'm seeing beer bottles. Yeah. And right. And noticing, be kind and friendly to yourself because it may be a new practice for you. So the idea is not to be good at it, even though we often want to be good at it. It's a practice. Mm-hmm. And the more you do it, the more adept you become at it. Join us next week. Vivian will be talking about the stories of our lives. This sounds like a soap opera, doesn't it? I feel like I'm seeing an hourglass. I forget which soap opera that was. But next week, Vivian will be talking about changing meaning. So we talked this week about how meaning is established and how to recognize meaning. And then let's change some of our meanings.
Yeah. And yeah, it is. I didn't realize it, but literally one word off from a soap opera name. It was Days of Our Lives.
That was it. Yep. The stories of our lives. So
you guys know we're
a new Netflix series.
We try and have fun with these names and these themes, and sometimes
we didn't even notice
exactly.
Yeah, that was already in our head. We thought we were being original.
Yeah.
I forget. I think it was some Greek philosopher said there's nothing new under the sun. And it's been a while since the time of the Greeks. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here, Vivian.
Thank you, Frank.
Let's do it again next week.
Yes. See you all.